15-year-old Maya Johnson stepped out of the late morning sun and into the cool, quiet hush of First Metro Bank. The air inside smelled faintly of paper, hand sanitizer, and something clean like lemon polish. She adjusted the strap of her backpack, smoothed her navy school polo, and took a deep breath. It was just a quick errand, one she'd done before, but today felt different. Maybe it was the weight of the birthday check tucked carefully in her wallet, $150 from her grandmother, who always said, "Save half, spend half, dream with the rest." Or maybe it was the way her stomach fluttered every time she walked into a place that felt too serious for someone her age. She stood near the end of the line, glancing around. The bank was quiet for a Tuesday. A few older folks sat on the stiff leather chairs near the entrance, one reading a newspaper, another tapping slowly on a phone. Behind the long counter, tellers moved with practiced calm, smiling politely, handing over slips of paper, counting bills with quiet precision. Everything about the place felt orderly, predictable, even a little stiff. Maya liked that. It made her feel like she was doing something grown-up, responsible. When it was finally her turn, she walked up to the counter with her shoulders back, just like her mom had taught her. "Hi," she said, voice steady. "I'd like to deposit this check into my account, please." The teller, a woman with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair, smiled warmly. "Of course, sweetheart. Do you have your account number or your card?" Maya nodded and pulled out her wallet. She didn't have a debit card yet. Her mom said she'd get one when she turned 16. But she did have the account number written neatly on a small slip of paper her mom had given her. She handed it over along with the check, careful not to crease the corners. The teller typed something into her computer, then paused. Her smile didn't fade, but her eyebrows lifted slightly. This is a joint account. With an Evelyn Johnson?" "Yes," Maya said. "That's my mom." "All right," the teller said gently. "Since you're under 18 and this is a joint account, I'll need to verify a few things. Do you have any ID with you? A school ID or something?" Maya's stomach dropped. She patted her pockets, then opened her wallet again. I don't have my school ID today. I left it in my locker. But I can tell you my mom's phone number, or her employee number. She works in finance." Before the teller could respond, a man in a crisp white shirt and navy tie appeared beside her. He was tall, with thinning blonde hair combed neatly to the side and a watch that looked expensive. His name tag read Derek, branch manager. He gave Maya a tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Everything all right here?" The teller turned to him. "Just verifying a deposit for a minor on a joint account. She doesn't have ID, but she says her mother is Evelyn Johnson." Derek's expression shifted, just slightly, but Maya noticed it. His eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in suspicion, like he was trying to solve a puzzle where the pieces didn't fit. "Evelyn Johnson?" he repeated slowly. "As in, the Evelyn Johnson?" Maya nodded. "Yes, she's my mom." Derek crossed his arms. "And you're here alone? No adult with you?" "I'm 15, Maya said, trying to keep her voice calm. "My school's just 2 blocks away. I came during lunch. My mom said I could handle this." He didn't respond right away. Instead, he looked her up and down. The school uniform, the worn sneakers, the way her fingers gripped the edge of the counter. To him, she probably looked like any other teenager. But something about her presence here, alone trying to deposit a check into what he assumed was a high-tier account, didn't sit right. He'd seen scams before, kids pretending to be someone's relative, trying to drain accounts. It was rare, but it happened, and in his mind, caution was better than regret. "Do you have any way to prove you're Evelyn Johnson's daughter?" he asked, his tone now cooler, more official. Maya blinked. I can call her right now. She'll tell you." "Go ahead," he said, gesturing to the phone in her hand. She pulled out her phone, unlocked it, and found her mom's contact. But just as she was about to press call, Derek held up a hand. "Actually, hold on. Let me check something first." He turned to the teller and whispered something too low for Maya to hear. The teller looked uncomfortable but nodded. Derek then walked back to his office, which had glass walls so he could see the lobby, and everyone could see him. Maya stood there, heart thumping. She didn't understand what was happening. She'd done this before, last year when her aunt sent her money for her science fair project. Back then, the teller had just smiled and said, "Smart kid," and processed the deposit. Why was this different? A few minutes later, Derek returned, his expression unreadable. "I've looked up the account," he said. "It is indeed a joint account with Evelyn Johnson. However, our policy requires proper identification for any transaction involving a minor, especially deposits over $100. Without ID, I can't verify your identity. But I'm not trying to take money out, Maya said, frustration creeping into her voice. I'm putting money in. My grandma's birthday gift. It's my own money. That doesn't change the policy, Derek said flatly. We have to protect the account holder. But my mom is the account holder, and she's my mom. I live with her. Then why didn't she come herself? He asked, raising an eyebrow. Because she's in a meeting, Maya said louder now. A few people in the lobby turned to look. She lowered her voice, cheeks burning. She trusts me to do this. I've done it before. Derek's jaw tightened. He glanced at the check again. $150 wasn't a huge amount, but in his mind it wasn't about the money. It was about procedure. And something about this girl, standing there so confidently in her school clothes, claiming to be the daughter of a woman he'd only seen in corporate newsletters, felt. He'd never met Evelyn Johnson in person, but he'd seen her photo, polished, powerful, always in designer suits. This kid didn't look like she belonged to that world, at least not in his imagination. I'm sorry, he said, though his voice held no warmth. Without valid ID, I can't process this. You'll need to come back with your mother or with proper identification. Maya's eyes stung. That's not fair. I'm not doing anything wrong. You're not being accused of anything, Derek said quickly. This is just standard protocol. But it didn't feel standard. It felt personal. It felt like he didn't believe her, like he thought she was lying or worse, trying to steal. She took a shaky breath. Can I at least call my mom so she can explain? Derek hesitated. Then with a sigh, he nodded. Fine, but make it quick, Maya dialed. The phone rang once, twice, then went to voicemail. Her mom was in back-to-back meetings all morning. She tried again. Same thing. She's in a meeting, Maya said, looking up at Derek, her voice small now. But I swear I'm telling the truth. Derek studied her for a long moment. The silence stretched. Then he said, I'm going to need you to step aside for a moment. Before she could ask why, he walked toward the back of the branch, picked up a phone, and dialed a number. Maya watched, confused. A minute later, he hung up and returned to the counter. Security is on their way, he said quietly. Maya's breath caught. Security? Why? I didn't do anything. You're refusing to leave after being told we can't help you without ID, he said, though she hadn't refused anything. And you're causing a disturbance. I'm not, she protested, voice rising. I'm just standing here. But Derek had already made up his mind. He'd seen too many suspicious situations escalate. Better to be safe. Better to involve authorities than risk a breach. He didn't consider that the risk might be a 15-year-old girl in a school uniform, holding a birthday check from her grandmother. Within 5 minutes, 2 police officers walked in. Tall, broad-shouldered uniforms crisp, belts heavy with gear. The lobby fell silent. The older man reading the newspaper lowered it slowly. The woman on the phone stopped texting. One officer approached Derek. They spoke in low tones. Then the officer turned to Maya. Ma'am, he said, though she was clearly a child. Can you tell me what's going on? Maya's throat tightened. She explained again, her name, her mom's name, the check, the account. She kept her voice steady, just like her mom taught her. When you're scared, speak clearly. Don't let fear make you small. But the officer didn't seem convinced. Do you have any ID on you? No, she said. I told them. I'm 15. I go to Jefferson High. I live 3 blocks from here. He glanced at Derek, who gave a slight nod. Then the officer said, We're going to need to verify your story. Can we look in your bag? Maya froze. My backpack? Yes. She didn't want to say no. She knew that would make things worse, but her stomach twisted. This wasn't right. She hadn't done anything wrong. Why was this happening? Slowly, she slid the backpack off her shoulders and unzipped it. The officer reached in, pulling out her math textbook, a water bottle, a half-eaten granola bar, and her wallet. He opened the wallet, flipped through it. Nothing but a library card, a bus pass, and a photo of her and her grandma at last year's summer picnic. No ID, he said to Derek. Derek nodded grimly. Like I said. Maya felt tears welling up, but she blinked them back hard. She wouldn't cry, not here, not in front of them. Then her phone buzzed in her hand. A text from her mom. Hey baby, just got out of my meeting. Everything okay? Maya's fingers trembled as she typed back. "Mom, the bank called the cops on me. They won't let me deposit Grandma's check." She hit send, and then standing in the middle of the bank surrounded by strangers who looked at her like she was a problem to be managed, she waited. She didn't know it yet, but everything was about to change. The two officers stood in front of Maya like walls she couldn't walk around. One of them, taller with a neatly trimmed mustache and a voice that sounded like it had been used to giving orders for years, asked her again where she lived, who her parents were, and why she was at the bank alone. Maya answered each question carefully, trying to keep her voice steady even though her hands were shaking. She repeated her address, her mom's full name, the name of her school. She even offered to show them her report card, which was tucked in the front pocket of her backpack. But the officer just shook his head. "Without ID or a guardian present, we can't confirm you're who you say you are," he said, not unkindly, but with that firm tone that left no room for argument. "We're going to have to hold you here until we sort this out." Maya's stomach dropped. "Hold me like... detain me?" "I didn't say detain," he corrected, though that's exactly what it felt like. "We just need to verify your identity. It's procedure." She glanced around the bank. A woman near the door quickly looked away when their eyes met. An older man pretended to read his newspaper, but his eyes kept flicking up over the top edge. No one said anything. No one stepped forward to say, "She's just a kid," or, "This seems like a misunderstanding." The silence pressed in on her like a weight. Then the officer reached for her backpack again. Not roughly, but with a kind of practiced ease that made it worse. He pulled out her wallet once more and flipped it open, scanning the contents like he was searching for hidden clues. Maya wanted to scream, "It's just a birthday check from my grandma," but she knew that wouldn't help. So she stood there, arms at her sides, eyes fixed on the polished floor, trying to disappear. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from her mom. "What do you mean, called the cops? Are you okay?" Maya typed back fast, fingers clumsy with panic. "2 police officers are here. They think I'm lying about who I am. The manager won't let me deposit the check." She hit send and clutched the phone like it was a lifeline. Her mom would fix this. She always did, but even as she thought it, a cold fear crept in. What if her mom couldn't get here in time? What if they took her somewhere? What if this turned into something bigger? The officer with the mustache stepped closer. "Is that your phone?" "Yes," Maya said. "Mind if I see it?" She hesitated. It felt like a violation, but she also knew refusing would make her look guilty. So she handed it over. He glanced at the screen, saw the text from Mom, and scrolled up just enough to see a few past messages, reminders about homework, a photo of their dog, a note that said, "Proud of you, baby." He didn't say anything, but his expression softened just a fraction. Still, he handed the phone back without a word and turned to his partner. "Let's call it in. See if we can reach the parent." Maya's heart pounded. She watched as the second officer pulled out his radio and spoke quietly into it, giving her name, her mom's name, their address. A few minutes later, he nodded. "Dispatch says there's no active warrant or missing persons report, but they can't confirm identity without verification." "So what now?" Maya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We wait," the first officer said. "Or your mom shows up." Maya nodded, swallowing hard. She leaned against the cool marble counter, trying to steady her breathing. She thought about her grandma, how she'd hugged her tight on her birthday and whispered, "You're going to do big things, baby girl." She thought about how excited she'd been to deposit that check, to prove she could handle responsibility. And now here she was, treated like a criminal for trying to do the right thing. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance, then faded. Inside, the clock on the wall ticked loudly. Every second felt like an hour. Then, tires screeched. Not loudly, but sharply enough that everyone in the bank turned toward the glass doors. A sleek black sedan pulled up to the curb, brakes hissing as it stopped. The driver's door flew open. A woman stepped out. She wasn't running, but she moved with a kind of focused urgency that made the air feel charged. She wore a tailored navy suit, heels clicking against the sidewalk, her dark hair pulled back in a low bun. Her face was calm, but her eyes, sharp, intense, locked onto the bank entrance like a laser. Maya's breath caught. Once before anyone could react, the woman strode through the doors, her presence filling the room like a storm rolling in. She didn't look at the tellers, the customers, or even the officers at first. Her eyes went straight to her daughter. "Baby," she said, voice low but strong. "Are you okay?" Maya's composure cracked. Tears spilled over, but she didn't sob, just nodded quickly, wiping her cheeks with the back of her hand. "Yeah, I'm okay." Her mom stepped forward and wrapped her in a tight hug, one arm shielding her from the room like a barrier. For a moment, the world outside that embrace didn't exist. Then she turned. Her expression shifted, still calm, but now edged with something steely. She looked at the two officers. "I'm Evelyn Johnson. This is my daughter. I received a text saying you were questioning her at this bank." The taller officer straightened slightly. "Ma'am, we were just verifying, and I understand procedure," she interrupted, not unkindly but with a tone that left no room for deflection. "But my daughter is 15 years old. She was here to deposit a birthday check from her grandmother into a joint account that I opened for her. She has done this before. She carries no government ID because she's a minor, and yet she was treated like a suspect." The officers exchanged a glance. The one with the mustache cleared his throat. "We were following protocol, ma'am. The bank manager reported a suspicious minor attempting to access an account without identification." "Suspicious?" Evelyn repeated, her voice dropping just enough to make the words sound dangerous. "Because she's young? Because she's black? Because she didn't look like she belonged in this bank?" No one answered. The silence was thick. Then Evelyn turned her gaze to the back of the lobby where Derek stood frozen near his office door, face pale, hands clasped tightly in front of him like he was praying. "Is that him?" she asked, not taking her eyes off him. Maya nodded. "That's the manager." Evelyn let out a slow breath. Then, still holding Maya's hand, she walked toward him. The officers followed a few steps behind, unsure whether to intervene or step back. When she reached Derek, she didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "I'm Evelyn Johnson," she said clearly so everyone in the room could hear, "CEO of Veritas Financial Group." Derek's eyes widened. His mouth opened, then closed. He looked like he'd been struck. Yes, she said. "I own this bank. Or rather, my company does. We acquired First Metro last quarter. I've seen your branch reports. You've been here 12 years. He swallowed hard. "I didn't recognize you." "I'm sure you didn't," she said evenly. "But that's not the issue. The issue is why you called the police on my daughter for trying to deposit a $150 check." "I was following policy," he stammered. "Minors need ID for transactions over $100. She didn't have any." "She's 15, Evelyn said. "She doesn't have a driver's license. She doesn't carry a passport to school. And this is a joint account, my account, with her name on it. You could have called me. You could have asked her to step aside while you verified with corporate. Instead, you assumed the worst." Derek looked down at his shoes. "I didn't assume anything. I was being cautious." "Cautious?" Evelyn's voice was quiet now, but it carried like thunder. "Cautious looks like double-checking. Cautious looks like kindness with boundaries. What you did wasn't caution. It was suspicion dressed up as policy." A few customers shifted in their seats. One woman pulled out her phone not to record but to text someone. Maybe her own child, maybe a friend. The moment felt heavy, like history was watching. Evelyn turned to the officers. "Thank you for responding. I appreciate that you were doing your jobs. But I'd like to handle this from here." The officers nodded. "Of course, ma'am. If you'll just sign a quick verification form." "I'll do more than that," Evelyn said. "I'll be filing a formal review of this branch's customer protocols. And I'd like a copy of today's security footage." The officers exchanged another look. Then one of them said, "We'll note that in our report." They left quietly, their boots echoing on the tile floor as they walked out. The tension in the room didn't ease. It just changed shape. Evelyn turned back to Derek. "Do you know why I opened a joint account for my daughter?" He shook his head. "Because I believe in teaching responsibility early," she said. "Because I want her to understand money, trust, and dignity. And today, you made her feel like she didn't deserve any of those things just because she walked in here alone. In her school uniform, looking like herself." Maya stood beside her mom, quiet now, but her presence was its own kind of power. She wasn't crying anymore. She was watching, listening, learning. Derek finally found his voice. "I'm sorry," he said, and this time it sounded real. "I truly am. I didn't mean to." "You didn't mean to humiliate my child in public," Evelyn finished for him. You didn't mean to make her feel like she had to prove she belonged in a place her own mother owns. But you did. She paused, then added, and that's on you. The room was utterly still. Even the tellers had stopped working, their hands frozen over keyboards. Then Evelyn turned to Maya. Do you still want to deposit Grandma's check? Maya nodded. Good, Evie, Elin said. She walked to the counter, still holding her daughter's hand. Let's get this done properly. The silver-haired teller, who had watched the whole thing with growing discomfort, stepped forward immediately. Of course, Ms. Johnson, I'll process it right away. As the teller worked, Evelyn kept her arm around Maya's shoulders. She didn't say another word to Derek, not yet. But the message was clear. This wasn't over. Outside, the sun had shifted. The world kept turning. But inside that bank, something had cracked open. A moment of truth that couldn't be ignored. And Maya, standing tall beside her mother, finally felt like she could breathe again. The teller's fingers moved quickly over the keyboard, her expression focused but gentle. She didn't look at Maya like she was a problem anymore. She looked at her like she was just a kid who'd had a really bad day. And maybe like she was someone worth protecting. The check was scanned, the account verified, and within minutes the $150 from Grandma was safely in the joint account. The teller even printed out a receipt and handed it to Maya with a small, warm smile. Here you go, sweetheart, she said softly. All set. Maya took the slip of paper, her fingers brushing against the warm printer edge. It felt real now. Official. Like she hadn't imagined the whole thing. She nodded, not trusting her voice just yet. But her mom wasn't done. Evelyn turned away from the counter and faced the center of the bank lobby. She didn't raise her voice, but somehow, everyone stopped what they were doing. The man with the newspaper lowered it completely. The woman by the door tucked her phone into her purse. Even the hum of the air conditioner seemed to quiet down. I know most of you were just here to do your banking, Evelyn began, her tone calm but firm, and I appreciate your patience. But what happened here today isn't just about my daughter. It's about how we treat people, especially young people, when they don't fit our assumptions. She paused, letting the words settle. Maya stood beside her, quiet but present, her school uniform a quiet contrast to her mother's polished suit. My daughter came in here during her lunch break, Evelyn continued. She wasn't loud. She wasn't disruptive. She asked politely to deposit a birthday gift from her grandmother. And instead of being helped, she was questioned, doubted, and ultimately treated like a threat. She looked directly at Derek, who still stood near his office, arms stiff at his sides, face flushed with shame. You called the police, she said, not accusingly, but with a kind of weary disappointment that somehow cut deeper than anger. You didn't ask her to wait while you called corporate. You didn't offer to speak to me directly. You saw a black girl alone in a school uniform, and you decided she must be up to no good. Derek opened his mouth to speak, but Evelyn held up a hand. I'm not saying you're a bad person, she said, but I am saying your bias showed up before your judgment did, and that's dangerous. Because when we let assumptions guide how we treat people, especially kids, we teach them that they don't belong, that they have to prove their worth just to be seen as human. A few people nodded. One older woman near the chairs wiped her eyes quickly with a tissue. Evelyn turned back to the room. I'm the CEO of Veritas Financial Group. We bought First Metro because we believed in its potential to serve all communities, not just the ones that look a certain way or carry the right kind of ID. But moments like this remind me that policies on paper don't mean much if the people enforcing them haven't done the work inside themselves. She took a breath. So here's what's going to happen. First, I'm requesting a full copy of today's security footage. Second, I'll be launching an immediate review of customer interaction protocols across all First Metro branches, with a focus on how minors and people of color are treated. Third, this branch will undergo mandatory anti-bias and de-escalation training, starting with the management team. She looked at Derek again. And you'll be part of that training, not as punishment but as a chance to learn, because I believe people can change if they're willing to look honestly at where they went wrong. Derek swallowed hard. I am, he said quietly. I really am. Evelyn studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded just once. Good. She turned to Maya. Ready to go, baby? Maya nodded. But before they left, she looked at Derek, not with anger, but with something quieter, more complicated. I just wanted to do something nice for my grandma, she said simply. Those words hung in the air like a bell ringing. Derek's eyes filled with tears. He didn't wipe them away. I'm so sorry, he whispered. You didn't deserve that. Maya didn't say anything else. She just turned and walked out of the bank beside her mom, the glass doors sliding shut behind them with a soft hiss. Outside, the afternoon sun was warm on their faces. The city buzzed around them, cars honking, people chatting, a street vendor calling out about fresh pretzels. It felt normal again. But Maya knew she'd never see that bank the same way. Her mom squeezed her hand. You okay? Maya thought about it. Yeah, she said after a moment. I mean, it hurt, but I'm glad you came. I'm glad too, Evelyn said, but I shouldn't have had to. They walked in silence for a block, past the school gates, past the little coffee shop where Maya sometimes got hot chocolate after track practice. Then Evelyn stopped. You know, she said, what you did today took courage. You stayed calm. You told the truth. You didn't let fear make you small. Maya looked down at her shoes. I was scared. Of course you were, her mom said. But you didn't let it win. That's what matters. They kept walking. A few people glanced at them, maybe because of Evelyn's suit, maybe because they'd seen the police cars outside the bank. But no one said anything. Back at the office, Evelyn's assistant met them in the lobby, eyes wide with concern. Ms. Johnson, your 2 p.m. is waiting. Cancel it, Evelyn said, and reschedule the board prep for tomorrow. I need the rest of the day with my daughter. The assistant nodded quickly. Right away. Upstairs in Evelyn's corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, Maya sank into the plush couch while her mom poured 2 glasses of water. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the building and the distant sound of traffic far below. You want to talk about it? Evelyn asked, handing her a glass. Maya took a sip. I keep thinking, what if you hadn't come? What if they'd taken me somewhere? Evelyn sat beside her. They wouldn't have, she said firmly. Not really. But the fear you felt, that was real. And that's the problem. No child should walk into a bank and feel like they're under suspicion just for existing. Maya nodded. He didn't even give me a chance. I know. They sat in silence for a while. Then Maya said, Do you think he'll really change? I hope so, Evelyn said. But change doesn't happen because someone tells you to. It happens when you're willing to sit with your discomfort and ask yourself hard questions, like why did I assume the worst? Or would I have treated a white kid the same way? Maya thought about that. She remembered a boy in her class, same age, same school, who'd once bragged about walking into a fancy store and trying on watches, just for fun. No one had called the cops on him. No one had even blinked. People see me differently, she said quietly. Yes, Evelyn said. They do, and that's not your fault. But it is your power to decide how you respond. You can let it shrink you, or you can let it fuel you. Maya looked out the window. The city stretched out below, endless, busy, full of stories just like hers. She thought about her grandma, who'd lived through things Maya couldn't even imagine and still found joy in baking pies and humming old songs. She thought about her mom, who'd built a company from nothing, who'd walked into that bank not just as a CEO, but as a mother ready to defend her child. I don't want this to just be about me, Maya said suddenly. Evelyn turned to her. What do you mean? I mean, maybe other kids go through this too. At banks, at stores, at school. Maybe if people knew what happened, they'd think twice before jumping to conclusions. Evelyn smiled. A real, proud smile. That's a powerful idea. Could we share what happened? Not to shame him, but to help people understand? Evelyn considered it. We'd have to be careful. Privacy, legal stuff, but yes, if you're comfortable with it, we could use this moment to start a conversation, maybe even create a program, teaching banks how to serve young customers with respect. Maya's eyes lit up. Like a workshop? Or a video? Whatever feels right, Evelyn said. But only if you're ready. I am, Maya said. I don't want anyone else to feel like I did today. Later that evening, after dinner, homemade lasagna, garlic bread, and a slice of peach cobbler from the freezer. Maya sat at the kitchen table with her laptop. She opened a blank document and started typing. Today I went to the bank to deposit my grandma's birthday check. She wrote slowly at first, then faster, the words pouring out like water from a dam. She didn't exaggerate. She didn't call names. She just told the truth, how she felt, what was said, what it taught her. When she was done, she showed it to her mom. Evelyn read it silently, her expression unreadable. When she finished, she looked up, eyes glistening. "This is good," she said. "Really good, honest human. Do you think people will listen?" Maya asked. "Some will," Evelyn said. "The ones who are ready to hear it." And that's enough to start. That night, Maya slept deeply for the first time in days. Not because the world had changed, but because she realized she didn't have to carry the weight alone. And sometimes speaking your truth, even and it hurts, is the first step toward making things better. Meanwhile, across town, Derek sat at his kitchen table staring at his untouched dinner. His wife had asked what was wrong, and he'd told her everything. The girl, the check, the CEO, the shame. She hadn't yelled. She'd just held his hand and said, "Then learn from it." He picked up his phone and searched for online courses on implicit bias. He found one that started tomorrow. He signed up. He didn't know if it would fix what he'd done. But it was a start, and sometimes that's all any of us can do, start again. With clearer eyes and a humbler heart. The next morning, the city woke up to something unexpected. Not a scandal, not a crisis, but a quiet ripple spreading through emails, group chats, and morning news alerts. By 8 a.m., a short post had appeared on the official Veritas Financial Group website, titled simply, "A Lesson in Dignity." It wasn't signed by the PR team. It was written in the voice of a 15-year-old. People read it over coffee on subway rides during quiet moments before work. The words were plain, honest, and painfully familiar to anyone who'd ever been judged before they'd even spoken. I went to the bank to deposit a birthday check from my grandma. I wore my school uniform. I didn't have ID because I'm 15. The manager didn't believe I was who I said I was. He called the police. I stood there while officers searched my backpack in front of strangers. I felt small. I felt like I didn't belong, even though my mom owns the company that owns that bank. The post didn't name the manager. It didn't demand punishment. It just asked one question at the end. What if I'd been someone else's child, someone you assumed was supposed to be there? Would you have treated me the same? By noon, the story had been shared thousands of times. Local news stations picked it up, not with sensational headlines, but with thoughtful segments featuring educators, psychologists, and community leaders talking about bias in everyday spaces. One reporter even stood outside the bank branch, not to ambush anyone, but to interview customers about their own experiences being questioned, followed, or doubted just because of how they looked. Inside Veritas Financial's headquarters, Evelyn moved through the day with calm purpose. She'd approved the post herself after Maya gave her final okay. She'd also sent a company-wide email, not a corporate memo full of jargon, but a letter that read like a conversation over dinner. Yesterday, my daughter was made to feel like a suspect for doing something responsible. This isn't just a bank issue, it's a human issue, and if we claim to serve all communities, we must examine not just our policies but our instincts. Starting next week, every branch manager will participate in a new training program, co-designed with youth advocates and anti-bias educators. We will also create a youth advisory council, because the people most affected by these moments should help shape the solutions. Down in the first Metro branch, the mood was tense. Employees arrived to find a printed copy of Maya's post taped to the break room bulletin board, next to the schedule and the coffee sign-up sheet. No one spoke much that morning. The teller with the silver-streaked hair kept glancing toward Derek's office. He hadn't come in yet. When he finally walked through the doors at 9:15, 10 minutes late, tie slightly crooked, he didn't go straight to his office. He stood in the middle of the lobby, took a deep breath, and gathered the staff. "I owe you all an apology," he said, voice rough but steady, not just for what happened yesterday, but for setting a tone that allowed something like this to happen under my watch. I let fear override fairness. I let assumption override respect. And that's not the kind of leader, or person, I want to be. He paused, looking at each of them. "I've signed up for the new training. I'll be the first to complete it. And if any of you have thoughts on how we can make this branch feel safer, more welcoming, especially for young people, I want to hear them." "Not later, now." One of the younger tellers, a woman in her early 20s, spoke up. "Maybe we could have a minor deposit protocol, like if a kid comes in without ID, We call the parent using the number on file instead of escalating. Derek nodded. Yes, absolutely. Another employee suggested keeping a small stack of temporary visitor badges for students doing errands during lunch, so they'd feel acknowledged. Not invisible, ideas started flowing. Quiet at first, then stronger. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Meanwhile, Maya was back at school. She'd expected whispers, maybe even stares, but instead something surprising happened. During lunch, a group of kids from the student council approached her table. We read your post, one of them said. It was brave, another added. We're starting a Know Your Rights workshop next month. Would you want to help lead it? Maya blinked. Me? Yeah, they said. You lived it, she agreed. And just like that, her pain began turning into purpose. That afternoon, Evelyn received a call from the regional police department, not about complaints, but about collaboration. The officer who'd responded to the bank reached out personally. We've been reviewing our own protocols for interacting with minors, he said. Your daughter's story hit home. Would Veritas be open to partnering on a community training for officers and bank staff together? Evelyn didn't hesitate. Yes, let's build something that prevents this from happening anywhere, not just in our branches. Over the next few days, the story kept growing, but not in the way viral outrage usually does. There were no angry mobs, no doxing, no calls for the manager to be fired. Instead, people shared their own stories. The time they were followed in a store, questioned at a hotel, asked to prove they belonged at a private event. Teachers posted about students who'd been stopped in hallways for looking suspicious. Parents shared how they'd started role-playing what-if scenarios with their kids just in case it became less about one incident and more about a shared recognition. Bias doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. In a tightened jaw, a delayed smile, a phone call made too quickly. Back at the bank, Derek did something unexpected. He called Evelyn, not as a subordinate to a CEO, but as one parent to another. I'd like to meet your daughter, he said when she answered. Not to explain myself, just to listen. Evelyn was quiet for a moment. Then she said, she's not a lesson. She's a person. I know, he replied. And I'd like to see her as one, not just as the girl I failed. After checking with Maya and getting a quiet, okay, I guess, they arranged to meet at a small cafe 2 blocks from the school, far from cameras, far from corporate eyes. Maya arrived first, sitting at a corner table with a hot chocolate. When Derek walked in, he didn't wear a suit. Just jeans and a button-down shirt, sleeves rolled up. He looked nervous. He sat across from her. Thanks for meeting me, she nodded. My mom said you wanted to talk. I do, he said. But mostly I want to listen. If you're willing to tell me how it felt, from your side. Maya stirred her hot chocolate slowly. It felt like I was invisible. And too visible at the same time. Like you saw me, but not really me. You saw a story you'd already made up. He winced. I did. I wasn't angry at you for not knowing who I was, she said. I was hurt that you didn't want to know. You didn't ask questions to understand. You asked questions to prove I was lying. Derek looked down. You're right. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Maya said, my grandma always says people can change if they're willing to be uncomfortable. Are you willing? He met her eyes. So I'm trying to be, she nodded. Then that's something. Before he left, he handed her a small envelope. Inside was a gift card to a bookstore and a handwritten note. For the next chapter. I hope it's kinder than the last. Maya tucked it into her bag. Not because she needed the gift, but because it felt like an offering. A small bridge across a wide gap. That evening, Evelyn came home to find Maya at the kitchen table again, typing. This time it wasn't a personal story. It was a proposal. Youth Financial Dignity Initiative. A program to train bank staff on serving minors with respect, co-led by teens who've experienced bias. Includes role-playing scenarios, policy feedback sessions, and a youth ambassador badge for students doing errands during school hours. Evelyn read it slowly, then smiled. You're building the world you needed yesterday. Maya looked up. Someone has to. At the next Veritas board meeting, Evelyn didn't just present quarterly earnings. She played a 3-minute audio clip. Maya reading her original post, voice calm but clear. Then she introduced the Youth Financial Dignity Initiative as a pilot program, starting with 10 branches in diverse neighborhoods. 1 board member, An older man who'd been with the company for decades cleared his throat. Is this really the role of a financial institution? Evelyn didn't flinch. If we believe money is power, then access to it should never come with humiliation. Teaching dignity isn't charity. It's good business and good humanity. The vote passed unanimously. A week later, Derek completed his first anti-bias training module. The facilitator, a black woman in her 40s who'd once been mistaken for a janitor at her own law firm, asked the group to reflect on a time they'd been misjudged. Derek wrote about his father, a factory worker who'd been denied a loan in the 1970s because men like you don't plan for the future. He'd never connected that memory to what he'd done to Maya. But now, he saw it. The cycle of suspicion passed down like an old coat no one questions wearing. He cried during the session, not for himself, for the girl he'd made cry. Back at school, Maya stood in front of her history class not as a victim but as a speaker. She talked about how systems are made of people, and people can choose to do better. After class, a quiet boy she barely knew handed her a folded note. It read, "This happened to me at the library last year. Thank you for saying it out loud." She tucked it into her notebook, right next to her grandma's birthday card, and slowly, quietly the world began to shift, not with a bang, but with 1,000 small choices to see each other more clearly. 3 months later, the air smelled like rain and fresh-cut grass as Maya walked toward the community center downtown. She wasn't in her school uniform this time. She wore dark jeans, clean sneakers, and a navy blazer her mom had given her for official occasions. In her hand, she carried a folder with notes not for a test, but for a presentation she'd helped design herself. Inside, the room was already filling up. Bank managers from across the city, police officers in plain clothes, teachers, parents, and a dozen teenagers from different high schools. They were all here for the first public session of the Youth Financial Dignity Initiative, a program that had started as a quiet idea over hot chocolate and grown into something real. Maya took a deep breath as she stepped to the front. She wasn't nervous like she used to be. She was focused. "Ready." "Hi," she began, her voice clear and steady. "My name is Maya. A few months ago, I walked into a bank to deposit a birthday check from my grandmother. I was 15, I didn't have ID, and I was treated like I didn't belong. She didn't dwell on the pain. She didn't point fingers. Instead, she talked about what came after. The conversations, the training, the small changes that added up. People kept asking me, 'Do you forgive him?' She said, glancing at Derek, who sat in the third row, notebook open, pen in hand. But forgiveness wasn't the point. Understanding was. And change is. She introduced the first activity, a role-play scenario. 2 volunteers, one playing a teen, one a bank employee, acted out a deposit situation. The first time, the employee followed old instincts, asked for ID immediately, called a supervisor, spoke in a tone that sounded more like suspicion than service. The room grew quiet. Some people shifted in their seats. It felt too familiar. Then they did it again, this time using the new protocol. The employee smiled, said, "Hey, I see you're under 18. Do you have your account number? If not, I can call your parent using the number we have on file." The teen relaxed. The interaction flowed. It wasn't perfect, but it was human. Afterward, a woman in the back raised her hand. "I work at a branch in the North District. Last week, a boy came in with a check from his soccer team fundraiser. He was 12. I almost asked for ID, but then I remembered this training. I called his mom. She answered right away, laughed, and said, 'Oh, that's for his cleats.' It took 2 minutes, and he left smiling." Maya nodded. "That's the goal. Not to catch people doing something wrong, but to help them feel seen." Later that afternoon, as the session wrapped up, Derek approached her. He didn't say much, just handed her a small stack of papers. "What's this?" she asked. "Our branch's new youth welcome guide," he said. "We made it with input from students. It explains how to open a savings account, what to do if you lose your card, and who to ask for help if you feel uncomfortable. We're printing copies for every high school in the district." Maya flipped through it. The language was simple. The tone was kind. There was even a cartoon of a smiling teen holding a piggy bank. "You did this?" she asked. "We did," he corrected gently. "With your mom's team and with your story in mind." She looked up at him. "Thank you." He nodded, then hesitated. I've been transferred to a training role, not customer-facing. Corporate thought it was best for now, but I get to help teach the new modules, so, in a way, your experience is helping others avoid what you went through. Maya didn't say good or I'm glad, she just said, that matters. That evening, Evelyn picked her up from the community center. They drove home in comfortable silence, windows down, city lights flickering past. When they pulled into the driveway, Evelyn turned off the engine but didn't get out right away. You did good today, she said softly. Maya smiled. We did. Her mom reached over and squeezed her hand. You know, I used to think protecting you meant shielding you from the world. But you've shown me that sometimes the bravest thing is to walk into the hard places and change them. Inside the house, Grandma was waiting with a fresh peach pie, still warm from the oven. She hugged Maya tight, her arms strong and familiar. I saw the news clip, she whispered. You sounded just like your granddaddy. He used to say, truth don't need volume. It just needs a voice. Maya leaned into her. I miss him. I know, baby. But he'd be proud. Over pie, they talked about the future. Maya mentioned a college counselor who'd reached out about a summer program in youth advocacy. Evelyn shared that Veritas was expanding the initiative to 3 more states. Grandma just listened, nodding, her eyes bright with pride. The next week, Maya stood in front of her school's student assembly, not as a victim but as a leader. She talked about financial literacy, yes, but also about dignity, about how being trusted matters as much as being taught. Afterward, a group of 7th graders gathered around her. Can we start a club? One asked. Like to help younger kids learn about banks and stuff? Maya grinned. Absolutely. She stayed late that day, helping them draft a charter, brainstorm names, plan their first meeting. By the time she left, the sun was low, painting the hallways gold. Back at the bank branch, things had changed in quiet ways. A new sign near the entrance read, All ages welcome. All questions honored. The tellers kept a small basket of youth ambassador buttons, blue and silver, for students running errands during school hours. It wasn't magic, but it was a signal. You belong here. One afternoon, a girl about Maya's age walked in, clutching an envelope. She looked nervous. The silver-haired teller spotted her right away. Hey there, she said warmly. Here for a deposit? The girl nodded. No ID? That's okay. Do you have your account number or your mom's phone? The girl's shoulders relaxed. Yeah, it's in my phone. Perfect, the teller said, smiling. Let's get you taken care of, no police. No suspicion. Just kindness with boundaries. Meanwhile, online, Maya's original post had been turned into a short animated video. Simple drawings, her voice reading the words. It was shown in schools and training sessions, even in a few bank lobbies. Comments poured in. This happened to me at the grocery store. My son was followed in a toy store last year. Thank you for saying what so many of us feel but can't explain. The story never became a national scandal. It didn't need to. It became something quieter, deeper. A mirror held up gently, not to shame, but to awaken. Months later, on a crisp fall morning, Maya and her mom walked into the same bank branch again. Not for a deposit, for a celebration. Veritas was launching the Youth Financial Dignity Initiative nationwide, and this branch, the one where it all began, was the first to receive the Dignity Certified designation. A small plaque would go by the door. Staff would wear special pins, and every new employee would hear Maya's story as part of their onboarding. As they stood near the counter, Evelyn turned to her daughter. Remember this place? Maya looked around, the same marble floors, the same hushed air, but it felt different now. Lighter. Yeah, she said, but it doesn't feel scary anymore. Evelyn smiled. Because you helped turn pain into purpose. They didn't stay long, just long enough to shake hands with the staff, to thank the teller who'd been kind from the start, to exchange a quiet nod with Derek, who now trained others in empathy as much as policy. As they stepped back out into the sunlight, Maya adjusted the strap of her backpack, still the same one, now a little more worn. She didn't look back. She didn't need to, because the real work wasn't in that bank. It was in the classrooms, the community centers, the quiet conversations at dinner tables where parents now said, if someone questions you, stay calm but know your worth. It was in the officers who paused before assuming, in the managers who asked, how can I help? before prove who you are. And it was in Maya herself, no longer just a girl who'd been doubted, but a young woman who'd chosen to build something better from the pieces left behind. Later that night, she sat at her desk writing in her journal, not for an audience, just for herself. Today I walked into the bank and no one looked at me like I didn't belong, not because I changed, but because we all did a little bit. Change doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it's just a teller who smiles first, a manager who listens, a mom who shows up, and a girl who decides her story isn't over. It's just getting started. Outside, the city hummed with ordinary life. Cars passed. Lights flickered on in windows. Somewhere, a child laughed, and in that moment, everything felt possible.